Welcome to Relentless Truth with John Warren, the podcast that extracts truth from a wide range of topics, revealing who God is, who we are, and how we relate to each other. Now, here's John with this week's powerful and practical insights.
Welcome to Relentless Truth. I'm John Warren. It's good to be with you again. Please like, share, review, and subscribe to Relentless Truth. And when I say that, I mean there are several ways to do that, but you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. But if you don't do that, you can go to our website, johnwarrenmedia.com. You can click on the episode. You can review the entire library of over 150 episodes now, and you can play them, and you can click on the link and share it with friends on social media or via email. Please do so. This is how we've grown this podcast. Its growth has amazed me, and we don't do this for the numbers. You notice we don't have a sponsor. We fund this ourselves. Our company, CFS Financial, works with nonprofits, primarily Christian schools and churches and parachurch ministries, on financial matters including debt restructuring, and governance, strategic planning, and the like. And so I hope you'll take a look at that tab on the website if you run a nonprofit or involved in a board. We have all the work we can get to over the years, over these many years of doing this work. After my banking career, I decided about, almost 12 years ago now, to engage in this effort to help ministries, ministry to ministries of sorts. And it's a blessing to do so. We told the story, Colette House and I did, of Aurora Christian School about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, on this podcast. And that is the school that started this work for me. I was referred to them through strange circumstances, and heard from a board member that they had a $21 million debt problem. And by God's grace, they are free of debt today through an astounding set of circumstances over these 12 years. They are now completely free of debt, and this school is thriving. I am thankful for the opportunity to have played a small part in their success. Well, I promised you that we would, by the way, you can send an email to me if you wish at john@johnwarrenmedia.com. Those are encouraging to me. Or go to our website, johnwarrenmedia.com, and use our contact form for that purpose. But I promised you that we would begin the study of Colossians today, and I'm going to deviate from that. I hope you'll stay with me. I don't usually do podcast episodes on personal matters, but I'm just overwhelmed by one. Really, it's being overwhelmed with God's faithfulness and answers to prayer that I have to interrupt my plans for this podcast episode and share it with you. Next time, I promise, by God's grace, we are going to embark on our study of Colossians. But today I want to tell you about something. I don't usually talk about personal matters, but a couple of things. My wife has had a knee issue with her left knee for many years. And I know many of you have various afflictions, various health issues. It seems that we all do. We all have something. And some people have multiple somethings, and that's very complicated. And I certainly understand that. And this isn't our first, health issue. I'm a cancer survivor, colon cancer survivor, stage 3 from just over 20 years ago now. And I know that many of you have survived such things, and God's grace is always sufficient. And I know those are commonly known truths. I know that suffering and affliction are part of our walk as Christians, part of the human condition, part of the fall. Know all those things. But going through this process with my wife has been eye-opening, and I want to explain what I mean by that. Physicians, you're going to find this probably, I hope, comforting, and I hope those of you who are going through a medical issue or have a medical issue that you've got to address that is upcoming, I hope this will be meaningful to you, but I think it's going to be most meaningful to everyone who listens. I think it'll be perhaps one of the most impactful episodes that we've had. So I want to tell you this story. My wife is athletic, and we have enjoyed lots of aggressive hiking. We have done whitewater rafting that is very dangerous on Class 5 rapids in places like the Gauley River in West Virginia. If you like whitewater rafting that is really dangerous, try the Gauley River. It's best for about 6 weeks in, if I remember correctly, September and half of October. They have a day where they jump from a bridge. They do base jumping. I think they still do it over the New River. The New River is a fun river to raft as well. And the Gauley is just technically just exciting. We flipped our raft in a Class 5 rapid called Iron Ring. If you've ever rafted the Gauley River, you know Iron Ring. Some people die there from time to time, kayakers and the like. We were in a raft, and we were with some friends, and this is years ago, and we bumped the edge. This is like in a canyon, and you have like rock walls on the side of the river. It's really cool. It's beautiful. And you just go from Class 4 to Class 5 rapid just all day long. And there's a 14-foot waterfall at the end that is really exciting, maybe too exciting. But we flipped our raft, we bumped the side of the canyon and scooted over a hole. A hole, for those of you who don't raft, is a hydraulic, and where the water is both backing upstream and going downstream at the same time. And it creates this weird-looking pool that looks calm, but it is vicious. And I was in the back of the raft with the guide on the left side, and the raft just shot downstream, throwing all of us, when it hit that hydraulic, and throwing all of us into the water, into 42-degree water, I might add, where I had a wetsuit on, thankfully. And I was doing backwards rolls, somersaults, if you will, in a little ball, or a big ball. And my paddle is gone. I had river sandals on, rafting sandals. If you know what those are, they have like a bunch of straps strapped around your ankle to hold, and they blew off my feet and were still hanging on by the ankle straps. I lost a contact lens. I lost my sunglasses, and thankfully my life jacket held on. Flotation device for rafting held on, and I have to tell you, I was cocky. It was the second day of rafting these really aggressive rapids, and I had kind of loosened everything up, and I was chatting with everybody. We were having a great time, and you just forget how dangerous this is. Well, thankfully, after it was only about 30 seconds, it felt like 5 minutes, and I didn't get a chance to take a breath when I went into this hydraulic. And I remember looking up, looking for the light so that I knew the sun was up, and I was really disoriented from all this rolling. And I grabbed a rock and just scratched and clawed, bloodied my fingers climbing out of that rapid, and I popped up and took a breath. I mean, the biggest breath I've ever taken, thankful to have oxygen. And it shot me, just catapulted me downstream about 40 feet in about a second. And I grabbed a rock on the side and started to climb out of the river. And a safety kayaker was on the other side of the river and yelled at me, and he came over, and after a discussion about hypothermia, we decided to take our chances. I jumped in the water, grabbed on the back of his kayak, and made it back to the rest of the group, who were thankful that I was there, because they did a head count and realized they were one short. They were about a half mile down the river at that point. This river moves. I forget the number of cubic feet per per second. Anyway, we did that kind of thing. We went to Costa Rica, did it again. We lived vacation life rather fully. We liked hikes in North Carolina that were rather steep, to waterfalls that were hard to get to, and probably drove our daughter crazy over the years with those kinds of vacations. We really enjoy that sort of thing. We've been into biking. We've just as we've gotten older, we like to go on walks in our neighborhood for many miles. And so for my wife to start really many years ago, we were avid tennis players and the like, and for her to start having to withdraw from activity 10 or so years ago was really hard to see. And it happened so gradually that you don't notice it as clearly. You start to have to give up some activity, and then you give up others, and then next thing you know, you're struggling to walk. And her gait had changed. She still lived life really fully and is amazing, but had to be careful with her left leg. Her right knee began to also hurt, and her hips began to hurt. Many of you have experienced this. And so 4 years ago, she had a crisis where the leg was just not functional. And our daughter happened to be home from college visiting us when this happened. And we had to sort of carry her to the car and put her in the back seat very carefully because it was incredibly painful. And we thought she had just completely blown out the knee. And so we had to get a wheelchair. It was during COVID, and we had to get a wheelchair at the doctor's office and wheel her in. And never having done these things, I'm hitting bumps and things and which are painful for her. And I mean, it was a comedy of errors in a way. If it hadn't involved serious pain, it would have really been funny to watch, I guess. But we took her into the doctor, and he was very cold, and a matter of fact, he had been recommended by a neighbor, and I'm not going to name him, but he just said, yeah, you need to replace the knee after they did an x-ray that was very painful to get in the right position for. Yeah, you're going to have the knee replacement, but these aren't emergencies, and we'll get to it in a few weeks. Try physical therapy in the meantime. And she looked at him and said, I can't do physical therapy. Well, they'll start gently, and you'll figure it out. So we didn't like that answer. And so I called a friend, Dave Dorr, who is an orthopedic surgeon who has pretty much retired and does some other things now, and great guy. And he referred us to a guy named Brad Burkhart, who is an orthopedic surgeon in Orlando. And Brad is amazing. Brad, we went to see him the next day, and she's still in pain and can't function. I can't walk. And so we get her in there, and he looks at her and gives her, he says, no, we can fix this for now, and we can treat this, and we'll see if you need to have your knee replaced. This was 4 years ago, almost exactly 4 years ago. He gave her injections, and many of you have had those injections, those steroid injections, and with an anesthetic of some kind. And it worked immediately, and she had immediate benefit. And then a couple days, 3-4 days later, had significant recovery of use of her leg. And so she has kind of toughed it out, trying, and many of you have done this, stem cells and hyaluronic acid injections and physical therapy, and then physical therapist gave her home therapy, and she's made it work for 4 years. And she just got to the end of her rope and said, I've got to have this knee replaced. And so we went to Brad Burkhart to have it done. And they have a surgery center, and believe it or not, they do full knee replacements on an outpatient basis if the patient is healthy. Otherwise, you stay in the hospital for a day or two. But in this case, we went to near Orlando Regional Health. We went to his surgery center. We got up at 3:45 in the morning. Had to be there at, I think, 5 o'clock, 5:30, something like that. And we went through the whole sign-up process and sat in the waiting area. And they called her back. I got to go back a few minutes later, and They gave her all kinds of anesthesia, and it was as if she was checking into a hospital. We've been through that process with me a couple times over the years. It was kind of the same process, but you're in this outpatient center where I don't know how to describe it. No offense to those of you who work in the hospital, but people were kind of happier and more organized. That's just the truth, and more focused. And it was just a great experience. And so surgery takes about an hour, maybe 45 minutes. It doesn't start for about an hour because they have to, do all the things they do, where they start the IV and pump you full of drugs that make you not care what's going on at first. And then that's after they talk to you about all the things and get all the sign-offs they need. They then do that process, and then you're ready for surgery, and you kind of wait in the queue. Connie was third in line for the surgery. And so Brad did an amazing job and not only called me after the surgery on my cell phone as I'm sitting in the waiting area, but then came out and we had a great conversation, including a conversation about Dave, who had referred us, Dave Dorr, who had referred us there. And then we wait a couple of hours, and I get to go back and see Connie, who has awakened and was, if you've ever done this with a loved one, you know that they speak very strangely and very slowly. I'm not going to try to imitate it, but it was really a serious day, and I wasn't, it wasn't something I laughed at, but it's laughable as I look back at it. I'm trying to interpret her. Anyway, it is what it is. So we put her in the car. The attendant who put her in this really fancy wheelchair that was cool. I will say there's a kind of wheelchair I didn't know existed. It looks like a sort of a miniature hospital bed, but is in the recumbent position, but still a wheelchair. And he puts her in the car, and she's not in any pain. And so I'm just getting to the reason for the episode now, but she was not in any pain, curiously, and we went home, and you know how that you have that ice machine thing that circulates really cold water, and we learned a trick for those of you who go through this, that you freeze those small water bottles, and they act as the ice. You put them in the device, in the cooler part of the device, with water. And instead of ice, and you don't have to constantly change ice, you just keep about 8 or 10 water bottles frozen, and you circulate, you rotate them. And anyway, that was very helpful in reducing inflammation. So she was pretty much out of it that first day, sleeping on the couch most of the day, using a walker, which I know is off-putting to a lot of people, but that's a safe way to get around after that surgery. Everybody kind of does that. Regardless of age. You can use crutches instead, but a walker is less painful and I think a little more stable. Not that I'm giving you medical advice, but quite a few days there where I'm taking care of all the household stuff, making sure that she's comfortable, replacing the ice, and it's a you wait an hour and then you do ice for 30 minutes, and then you wait another hour, ice for 30 minutes. And you do that all day long. Thankfully, you don't do it at night, but you do keep the knee elevated above the heart at night with a pillow. And she slept for a couple of days and then started progressing. One of the secrets, and by the way, surgical technique matters. They aren't all the same, but one of the secrets of Brad's process, and I know others do this too. I don't know exactly about the cutting and fitting and all the things that go into this. It's complicated. There's a lot involved, although they do it very quickly and well. There's a lot involved in a knee replacement surgery. They're cutting the bone. They're putting prosthetic devices in. They're both titanium and plastic, and they know exactly what they're doing. But there's lots of complexity there. One of the pieces of complexity is they flood the area with an anesthesia, a liquid. And they do that before they close. And surgeons, I'm sorry, I don't know how to describe exactly what goes on there. I don't remember the name of the anesthesia, but it started with an E, if I remember correctly, and I probably don't. But that is one of the secrets to success. She had no pain for at least 2 days, maybe 3 from this. She had to wear a bracelet saying that, she had that drug, because if you were to have a medical emergency, it would be important for people to know that. So it's apparently a very powerful one. She actually only took painkillers for a day and a half. She took 3 of them, 3 tablets, and that's it. And Tylenol has done the trick ever since. She's virtually had no pain. It's amazing. And her right knee pain has gone, is instantly disappeared. Her hip pain instantly disappeared. So this being out of balance has, and many of you have experienced all this stuff. I don't want to belabor the point any further. But here's something that has shocked me. God has been faithful. That doesn't shock me. It shocks me just how faithful, though. And I want to tell you about her recovery just real quickly, and then I'm going to shift gears completely for a few minutes, if you'll bear with me. Her recovery has been amazing. She is an excellent patient. She does all the things that the physical therapists tell us to do. So she had surgery on a Monday, first physical therapy appointment on a Thursday, and they were amazed, genuinely amazed, not just, they're very nice people, but genuinely amazed. It's ability rehabilitation. And we go to the one in Orange City, Florida. So I got to give them a shout out, because they are truly an amazing physical therapy staff. And her progress is incredible. She is now about 12 days as I'm recording this. Let's call it 11 days from surgery. It's the Friday, the week following the surgery. She's been to 3 physical therapy appointments now. And she is at the place that they wanted her to be in week 3 or 4. If you've had a knee replaced, one of the things that they want to get you to is a 90-degree bend. She's at 96 or 98 degrees, which is wonderful, which is just a rich blessing. She's off of the walker. She kind of carries a cane around with her for support and is looking to ditch that as soon as possible. She's not without pain. The rehab is painful. There's a lot going on. It's difficult to do some things around the house. I'm still doing most of the domestic things that need to be done, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. What a blessing that is to do for you guys who maybe don't do that sort of thing. It's what a rich blessing it has been to do the dishes and do the things that Connie has done for me to free me up to teach and do podcasting and do all the other things I do. What a rich blessing it has been to do all of those things and really learning how to cook. I could cook some things before this, but really learning how to do the whole thing and complete meal prep and cleanup and all the things. It's just different when there are 2 of you, and even if you pitch in and help, it's just been a rich blessing to get to do those things, to change the ice and make sure that she's comfortable and go grab, refill her water a bunch of times each day and make sure that her medicine is on schedule. And it was complicated because you've got to take antibiotics and anti-inflammatories and other things that the surgeon prescribes, and you got to do it for a certain day, certain frequency, and some with food, some not with food, and all of those things. And everybody deals with all that stuff. I understand that, but it all of that has been a blessing. I don't know how to describe it, but God's faithfulness in the recovery is one thing, and it's been amazing. And she's not this super athletic, unusual person who just recovers perfectly from it. It's not like that. I'm not telling you that story. I'm telling you that God has healed her, recovered her, using medicine, using ice, using physical therapy, and all these tools way faster than most people recover because of an answer to prayer. And I want to acknowledge that publicly. That's one of my purposes here, to acknowledge that God has answered prayer. But that's not what this episode is about. I tell you that story to tell you that there's an opportunity here that has been clear to me. And this has been clear to me before. But you forget things over time. You forget the good things, the lessons that God teaches you through adversity. You forget those things. And I want to talk about a few things that jump out at me. And I want to thank some people publicly. I'm just going to use I'll tell you their names, actually. I'll tell you some of their names. Our friends from our church, Richard and Barbara Warner. They're special people. If you know them, and I know your listeners are all over the country, and I know you have friends too, and you have people in your church who are like Richard and Barbara, but they are the first to arrive whenever there is calamity. Connie went through a thing that I didn't tell you about yet, where she was incredibly nauseous from the anesthesia for the first day. She may or may not want me to tell that story. But it was so bad that I contemplated dialing 911. And we got her settled, and there was a knock on the door, and it was Barbara. And she handed me food, fresh blueberries, lasagna that they had cooked, and I forget what else, but there was something else. And she did one of those things that people do when they're incredibly sensitive to these things, when they're knowledgeable about how this goes. She knew I couldn't stand at that door long. She handed it to me and said, "This is for you. We're praying for you, and just wanted you to know. And so take good care of Connie. How's she doing? She's doing great. Okay, thank you." And she leaves, knowing that I can't stand there long because I've got to be with her. The first 24, 48 hours are critical. You need to be in the room most of the time. So I took the things and refrigerated the things that needed to be refrigerated, and there might have been a card in there. Forgive me, I don't remember. And then a couple hours later, the doorbell rings again, and it's Nancy Maynard. If you don't know, if you live in the area, and I know most of you don't, but if you do, and you don't know Nancy and Bob Maynard, you need to. Special, gracious people. She similarly handed me at the door an orchid and one of those pre-made meals from a place we really like. And I think there's a card and maybe something else at it. I'm sorry, I don't remember. And she was just so similarly sensitive, caring, just said a couple of comforting words and told me to be sure to hang on to this part of the bag. And it was just the most loving encounter. And I know that, I know how they live, and it was, we care for you. So here, take this. And she said, "I know Connie said you don't need food, but here." She had actually cooked some things in advance, and we were ready for all the things that needed to happen. But what a great, and then we get knocks at the door over the next couple of days with this florist and that florist, with a lady we know in Pensacola. I'll tell you her name, Kelly Gary. How sweet it was to get flowers from her. There's a plant that arrived, other flowers and things, and goodness, it just sweet outreaches, text messages, countless ones from friends at our church and elsewhere, just reaching out and checking on us, phone calls from all kinds, family and friends, and I've learned something here, and it's a lesson I've learned before, but there's I'll tell you the things I've learned. I'm gonna read a section of Romans 12, not the memorized part, not the 12:1 and 2, the Christian memory verses, but they're important, not diminishing that, but the rest of the chapter tells us how to live, and there's a section that I think applies here, but I'm struck by the value of a card, a flower, food, outreach, a conversation, a text, an email. When you're struggling, like especially like we were the first day, where I'm not sure how this is going to go with the nausea. And once God answers prayer and everything settles down, and I'm thinking, man, and my physician, who's my friend, texted me, and when I told him that surgery went well, and he said, be very careful for the first 24, 48 hours. They really should be in a hospital for this period. And I'm thinking, oh man. And I can see why after the whole nausea thing. I'll spare you all the details, but God was faithful and gracious through all of that, and used his people, those people I named and some more whose names I'm forgetting, and I'm sorry for doing that if you're listening. But several people reached out at just the right time. And it was just comforting to know that other people care. It almost reduces me to tears now to tell you this story. Another lesson I learned is the difficulty of being a patient. We all have this knee-jerk reaction. Most of us do anyway. Some people don't, but most do. Where if somebody asks you how you're doing, you say fine. When you're not fine. You're not fine if you're a major surgery patient the day of surgery and the day after, and maybe several days, maybe even weeks, maybe even months. This recovery, full recovery from this knee surgery, takes 6 months, if all goes well. So no, you're not fine. It's hard to be the patient. You have to be able to get to a toilet several times a day if you don't have a catheter, and you probably don't have a catheter. You have to be able to eat, to function, and you need water, you need ice, you might need heat depending on the surgery you've had. You might need all kinds of things. It is just difficult being a patient, and we don't have to meet all those needs. They need to be met, but just people loving you with small gestures that don't get in the way. And that's why I belabored the point with Barbara. She knew exactly what to do and not to do. And I mean, they brought desserts too, creme brulee. My goodness, Richard is an amazing cook. But anyway, neither here nor there. So difficulty of being the patient is the one thing. And I want to sound self-serving here for a minute and say another issue that has hit me right between the eyes is the difficulty of being the caregiver. Now, many of you are caregivers for aging parents, for loved ones, for someone with disability. I know all that, and I've seen it, and I'm amazed at it. It's not something I've discounted in the past. However, I have never been this tired. I am more tired than I ever thought I could be. and my back is sore. I'm doing double duty. I'm forgetting my own care to some degree. I mean, you know what I'm saying, caregivers. You know people who've done this and who do this. I mean, we have some people in our church who do this 24/7 and have done it for years. And we have friends who've other places who've done this. And my goodness, I knew you were special. I knew it was hard, but I had no idea. I mean, it's not 24/7, but it almost is. You think about it 24/7, and you're constantly thinking about the patient. Are they in pain? Am I doing the right thing? Do they have the things they need? Are they, and then, oops, there's this over here. It's mealtime, and I've got to make sure that these things are coordinated, and on and on and on, the cleaning and cooking and care and ice and hygiene and all the things, doing the wash and the changing the sheets and all the things that I know many of you laugh probably when you hear me say all this because you take it for granted and you've always done these things. But when you do all of those things plus your own work, it is just it's wonderful. It's a sweet exhaustion. I love being able to. I'm thankful for being able to do it. It is eye-opening. God has been nearer, if I may say. My awareness of God's nearness is increased, I think is the right theological way to say that. He has been sweet and merciful and gracious And this has been wonderful. Our union together has been stronger even, and it was strong going in. Connie's gratitude has been incredible. And so I have come up with a list. I want to close with this. I've come up with a list of 7 things, just 7 lessons that I've learned, and they're not all that poignant maybe, but to you. But I'm gonna say them, and then I'm gonna read a verse in Romans 12. Number 1, reach out to people who are experiencing health challenges or any serious challenge. This is a window where you can have tremendous impact. You might not be able to wow a person, in the normal course of life. I know everybody's suffering, everybody's hurting, everybody's experiencing challenges all the time. But these challenges, particularly health challenges, give you an opportunity by just showing up. Be sensitive like Barbara and Nancy, but just show up or just send along something. A card that ordinarily wouldn't mean much means everything. And don't worry about making it perfect. Just show up. Just do it. Just reach out. This is a wonderful opportunity. So that's number 1. And 2, I just said it, don't aim for perfect. The smallest card, flower, or other gesture goes a long way. So don't, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be comprehensive. You don't have to overwhelm them. In fact, they just soon not be overwhelmed. But just a symbol that we're thinking and praying for you, here it is. And then here's number 3. Ignore the impacted person or family and when they say, I don't need anything, and give them things that they might need. Give them food. I know that's maybe a Southern thing, maybe a traditional thing, maybe something that, and give them food that is healthy, that they can eat. If you know them, give them food they might like, but give them food. Number 4, recognize this. Life is harder for them than their portrayal. Life is harder than they are telling you that it is. I said to Barbara and Nancy on the day when things were not going well at all, I said, oh, she's doing great. Things are going well. I might have said, well, it's challenging because I know these ladies well, but we're doing okay. And we weren't okay at all. So just recognize, you don't need to pierce that veil and jump in and help when they don't ask for help, but recognize life is harder for them than their portrayal, and pray accordingly and love them accordingly. Number 5, the caregiver, I've already said this, is exhausted and overwhelmed, and both the caregiver and the patient on some level are fearful. So love them generously. Just know that the caregiver is exhausted. And some of you who are caregivers and have been for many weeks, months, years, you've gotten used to the exhaustion, so you don't know you're exhausted. I'm sure that's true. I'm in a pattern now where I'm good being really tired, more tired than I've ever been before, consistently. And the caregiver is the one that has to put the car in the right position and put the person in the car and take the walker or whatever the device is that makes them ambulatory in the right place. And you do all those things because you love people, and it's wonderful to do, but you just get, it adds to normal life function. It more than doubles it, because the caregiver care is harder than just normal ambulation and all the other things that we do, that we take for granted. So the caregiver is exhausted and overwhelmed, and both the caregiver and patient are fearful. There's a fear associated with major medical issues. What if it doesn't turn out right? What if I don't react to the anesthesia the right way? What if they don't do it properly? What if I don't recover well? What if I don't walk again? What if it doesn't work? What if it's like this one case I heard about? All those fears are normal, and both the patient and caregiver are fearful. They're experiencing some level of anxiety. Trusting God is something that I think we do well in our family. I think my wife and I do it very well at this stage. I'm not saying we've attained exactly where we need to be ultimately, but we're progressing in that regard. I'll say it that way. But we were fearful. And the generous love that we've received and continue to receive is just beautiful. Number 6, recognize that people from a health standpoint, that are vulnerable from a health standpoint, offer you an opportunity to live life impactfully like never before. This, I said this in number 1, kind of, but this is a window that allows us, with people who are vulnerable, who are struggling from a health standpoint, who have a major issue, it is a window of opportunity to impact them like you don't have in the normal course of life. Consider these things wonderful windows. I went to see a guy, his name is Dan Hoffman. He's a lovely gentleman. He's one of my favorite people who attended a class I taught at my church and just was so faithful and encouraging. And he had to be in the hospital for a bit with a medical procedure and then rehab, and I went to see him. And I experienced this from the visitor standpoint, and gave him a small gift and just spent some time with him, and it was precious. The staff came in and said, "Oh, we wish all our patients were like Dan," and just that visit I could tell meant so much to him. Something that I had thought about doing and wanted to do and did, and I wanted to love him well by showing support and all of that, but I had no idea it was going to be that impactful. So, and it's just important. Recognize that this is a window. This is a wonderful opportunity that you don't have in there. I guarantee you, Barbara Warner and Nancy Maynard and their families know this. They've learned this life lesson, that this is a window, and they say, we're going to do this. We're going to take advantage of this opportunity to love people well. And number 7, before I read the scripture, 7, people are struggling and suffering. We don't disclose it. We don't discuss it, and that's fine. We're human beings. We don't like to whine and complain, but everybody struggles. In the words of the REO song, everybody hurts. REM, sorry, I said REO. I get my great old rock bands confused. REM. People are struggling and suffering. Everybody is hurting. We don't disclose it, but we're all in need of love from each other. This experience calls this to mind. I look at the people even who provided us with things to tell us they loved us during this process. I look at their lives. They are experiencing hurting. There's cancer. There's recovery from things. There are physical limitations. There's, oh my goodness, there's vertigo. There are all sorts of things, and they have needs too. I mean, I don't reach out enough. I mean, this just calls to mind that we all have a wonderful opportunity. Well, the Apostle Paul has instructed us in this regard. He says in Romans 12 and verse 9, this is familiar to you, I know. Let love be genuine. Abhor what is evil. Hold fast to what is good. And listen to this, verse 10. Love one another with brotherly affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. Do not be slothful in zeal. Be fervent in spirit. Serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in tribulation. Be constant in prayer. Contribute to the needs of the saints and seek to show hospitality. My goodness. I mean, that just reduces me to tears. Just think about it. If we just do those things, these dear people I named and others whose names I'm forgetting right at the moment, practice this perfectly by God's grace during this time. We are commanded to do this. Paul's talking to the Roman church, but he's also talking to us. And it's not just Paul. He's inspired by the Holy Spirit. This is God's inspired word for us. Serve the Lord, rejoice in hope, be patient in tribulation, be constant in prayer, contribute to the needs of the saints, and seek to show hospitality. And earlier he had said, outdo one another in showing honor. Love one another. Before that, love one another with brotherly affection. I'm so thankful that those people I named and others listened, that they're obedient to this. It's just the way they live, actually. It's not unusual for them. It's no big deal to them. It's how they are. It's how I want to be. I'm just touched by this. I wanted to share this story with you. I thank you for, if you've stayed with me these 48 minutes, thank you for indulging this story. I hope it's helpful to you. I hope this scripture, if nothing else, is helpful. I think God uses us in each other's lives. I rarely talk about personal things, but I had to share this with you. Praise God, my wife is on the road to recovery. She's walking around the house somewhat tentatively because she doesn't have confidence yet, but with a normal gait for the first time in I don't know how many years. I'm thankful for Brad Burkhart and his office. I could start naming people, but I'll leave people out who were involved in her care and who will be involved in her care. She still has her stitches in. She gets them out in 3 or 4 days. And the lady who's going to take the stitches out is the one who put them in surgery. And their care is tender and compassionate. And they say, hey, there's a little trick here you can do that might make a difference in your recovery. And they give you the value of their experience. Young people, experience is so valuable. You have resources. You can go to older, experienced, qualified people and learn not shortcuts, but the best practices, the best way to do things. And we've experienced that with this medical practice. They are just outstanding. Brad's technique is truly amazing. The experience from day one 4 years ago to today has been incredible. And I, if you know me, you know I don't say that about many people, about many businesses, about many medical practices. My primary care physician is a guy named Paul Sovereign. That's spelled Sovran, and he does this. He practices excellence all the time. He doesn't listen to me and tells me the truth, and he practices excellence all the time. His people do. I know them well. Martha, who works in his office, is outstanding. There are some just, and the reason these people stand out is the state of healthcare is not great in this country. There's lots of profiteering, lots of incentive plans, lots of scorecards, and lots of centralized service, customer service, and depersonalization of medical practices. But this has been a great experience. Well, I hope this is helpful. I hope these 7 points are helpful to you. I hope you're encouraged. Many of you do this well, and I really just wanted to commend you. And I'm not preaching at the rest of us, but I am suggesting that this is a wonderful opportunity. Whenever a person is going through something like this, something more major or more minor, it's a wonderful opportunity to love each other well. Consider it a window that opens where you can really be impactful in the life of another person. That is, after all, what the discipleship that we're commanded to do in Scripture is really about, loving each other well in the context of the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ. Well, thank you for listening, and thank you for following the podcast and for telling your friends about it. I hope you'll share this episode with others. I hope it's been meaningful to you. I promise to you, God willing, we will embark on our journey through the beautiful epistle of Colossians, Paul's epistle to this church. It is all about Christ, all about Christology, and I think you'll really enjoy it. So I hope you'll come back and listen next week. So please like, share, review, and subscribe to Relentless Truth. You can find us wherever you get your podcast. The website is johnwarrenmedia.com, and my email address is john@johnwarrenmedia.com. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to Relentless Truth with John Warren. Please consider sharing this podcast and subscribe to receive future episodes. Connect with John regarding your comments, questions, and show ideas through johnwarrenmedia.com or at John Warren Media on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. That's all for this episode. Join us next week for another edition of Relentless Truth with John Warren.